Hey, it's me again, B with sunglasses. In this video, I'm going to be ranking the difficulty of each fighter from easiest to hardest. Now, I am basing this off of how difficult it is to reach the point where you'd be considered good at a character, but not a pro. I won't really have a point system or anything, I'm literally just going to be ranking them and putting down my thoughts. I don't think you need to know much about fighting to know that playing Rocket is borderline trivial. Not only is his movement insanely easy to understand, but for a ranged character he really doesn't have to do all that much aiming. His ult requires practically no skill whatsoever, and anytime you mess up it is at least fairly forgiving. Not much to say about Rocket. Next! I know Katana is getting a rework soon, but in his current state, he doesn't require very much brain power. Yes, you could go on about positioning, but we're not talking about competitive play here. His M1 cycle is super easy to remember, and after you learn that, you pretty much got the gist down for Katana. Moves like Q and E do require some thinking though, which is why it's a step up from Rocket. This one is a lukewarm take, but Hyperlazer's kit is actually really easy to get into. Everything he does is really self-explanatory, and while although aiming with him can be difficult, that's a skill pretty much everyone needs to work with anyway. As most of you already know anyway, it didn't take much experience from me to get some MVPs with him. I think you all saw Sword this low from a mile away. While although some of his moves do require a decent amount of strategy or predicting, playing Sword is not a very straining experience. I mean, he's the first character of the roster, of course he's going to be pretty simple. His inputs in general also just feel pretty slow, at least in my experience. I do like to play him sometimes when I want a more relaxing experience though. I know lots of people like to clown on Slingshot for being super easy and rewarding at the same time, but I think he deserves not much, but a tiny bit more credit than what's given. Whenever I attempt to play Slingshot, I struggle to keep myself in the air properly, which seems to be, for the first time on this list, a special but basic skill you need to learn. Other than this though, Slingshot's kit is pretty self-explanatory with everything you'd expect from your basic ranged fighter. I've had a fairly simple experience with Subspace, but his moves are a little bit more complicated than others so far on this list. I don't really have much to say about Subspace because he's kind of a middle ground fighter on this list, but I will say that the most difficult thing, at least for me, is landing his ult correctly. I'm just not sure how some people do it. Although Banhammer's kit can become pretty difficult in competitive fighting, at face value, it's really not too bad. There is some pretty good understanding of how each ability moves that's required to be good at him. His ult actually can be a little difficult to land, but once you stop hesitating so much, you can full send it. Overall, not a very difficult fighter. Huriken actually does require some pretty good coordination to use all of his moves in contingency with each other. His E isn't very long, so you have to strategize, and he has two different versions of his M1. Getting a backstab in can also be a little difficult. We're getting to the point where some real strategy is involved in this list. Because of the complete lack of mobility she has, Vine Step does require some skill to use properly. On top of how much you have to focus on the enemy team, you also have to focus on healing your own team. Ult placement can also be a little tricky, and her moves in general require a lot of strategy. Overall, a character that requires fairly good focus. As braindead as people like to call him, Biograph actually requires some good skill to stay alive and get kills as. He's super fragile and all of his moves require some good coordination to use properly. His ult also requires you to use the same abilities as you were before, requiring even more focus this time. Because of your glass cannon-like nature, you have to be on constant watch of everything around you. Cythe is higher up than most would put her, but I do think that playing her to a good level does require some serious practice compared to the rest on this list so far. You're incorporating a lot of ranged and melee skills at the same time, so using both of them as efficiently as possible and knowing when to use which are a decision that does require a lot of skill. To be good at Medkit, you have to be really consistent with headshots. Furthermore, you'll usually be under constant pressure because of how much of a target you are for divers such as Biograph and Skateboard. Even your basic positioning is generally pretty difficult to get right, and moves like Q require you to get really close to the enemy, so you also need to know how to properly deal with that. When playing Medkit, you also need to be balancing team play and enemy play, as in sometimes you need to focus on headshots and other times you need to focus on healing a specific teammate. The constant focus and utility you need to play Boombox is actually pretty crazy. He simply just takes a lot of practicing and fine-tuning to get good at, especially considering how vulnerable you are against other melees if you don't know what you're doing. 2 of his moves are recastable, meaning more things to keep track of on top of the rhythm system he has. I think everyone saw this coming. Skateboard is a fighter that switches between incredibly fast, focused gameplay and incredibly vulnerable, yet powerful gameplay. Every trick you do requires some level of timing, and every turn you do needs to be coordinated to land where you want to land. Of course, once you're off board, Skate becomes very strong, but easily killed if not careful enough. Becoming good at Skate requires a lot of focus, practice, and coordination. No introductions needed. Coil has 4 separate movesets, all with completely different abilities and situations you use them in. Learning to move through each of his modes smoothly forces you to develop some completely new reflexes. You also have to be paying attention to your tethers and decide which teammate needs one most and which tether is best. Of course, you can't be too slow deciding because Coil is really squishy, so you have to learn how to use moves in a way that helps you dodge attacks properly. His ult, although not too difficult to learn, still requires its own special combos and good proximity skills.